Most people are over-insured, and in this video I'm going to show you how to better spend your money. I'm a former business consultant that used to work for a large insurance company, and this is how insurance companies operate. Based on all the available information they have, they calculate what they can charge you to make a profit. Insurance is not a charitable business. They are in it for the money. In fact, financial businesses are known for being ruthlessly competitive. Let's say you get anti-theft insurance for your car. If your car gets stolen, then you get a payout, and you don't lose any money. The insurance company calculates the probability that your car gets stolen, and it's simply a matter of the math, seeing how long on average you can expect the car to not be stolen, what the expected value is of the car, what the expected payout is that you will have to get when the car gets stolen, and what the probability is of that happening. And then you get the expected value by multiplying all the expected outcomes by all the expected probabilities. Crucially, the insurance company is much better at it than you are. It has much better access than we do to things like base rates, which is the probability that something happens statistically over time. In the case of your car being stolen, it has connections with the dealers, and it has access to lots of information about how often specific types of cars get stolen. Interestingly, what I learned about this is that it's actually medium high-end cars that get stolen the most. You might expect that the more valuable the car, the more likely it is to get stolen. But if you drive a Bugatti or a Lamborghini, then that's actually not stolen as often as something like a Mercedes or an Audi, because a Mercedes or an Audi, you can steal it and you can sell it. But if you steal a certain type of Bugatti, then that might be only one of a few Bugattis in a certain area, so it's very hard to get rid of it. So based on a specific type of car, you have specific base rates of likelihoods of the car being stolen. So using this information, the insurance company can calculate what it has to pay you if a car gets stolen in any given month, the probability that the car gets stolen, and then charges you more than that. And as a result, the insurance company has a positive expected value, which means that you have a negative expected value of your investment. Insurance is a zero-sum game. The money that they make is the money that you lose. And they are a for-profit company that does the utmost to make sure that they get a profit, which means that they are doing the utmost to make sure that you are getting a negative return on your investment. As an interesting side note, when I worked at insurance, I was surprised to learn how much information you get out of a postcode. You know what neighborhood someone lives in, which is a decent proxy for how wealthy they are, how much money they make. You also know what type of car they buy, which tells you a lot about a certain person. And then you can look up basically the average housing price or even the exact house price that someone has. Postcode is also a surprisingly strong predictor of children's outcomes. Many things that parents do, how they raise their children, have surprisingly little impact on their children's long-term success in life, whereas their postcode is highly predictive of future success, because it tells you what type of people live in your neighborhood. And people tend to become more like the people around them. So if you have highly successful people around you, you tend to become more successful and vice versa. Given that the expected value of your investment with insurance is negative, under standard economic definitions, insurance is irrational. You are investing money into something that has a negative expected value given the best possible estimates from the insurance company, which are probably better than your best estimates. Even in the case where you do have access to better information about your future outcomes than the insurance company because of some individual situation. And if you don't disclose that type of proprietary information, this usually constitutes insurance fraud. For example, you just went to the doctor and you found out you have cancer and then you get health insurance. You have to disclose that you have cancer. Otherwise, that's insurance fraud and you cannot just reap the benefit of that. So insurance companies tend to close pretty much all the loopholes in cases where you do have better access to information than the insurance company. Now, usually when people hear this information about insurance being negative, they say, well, I get insured for things that have such a negative catastrophic outcome that I cannot bear it, so I want to mitigate that risk. And that might make some sense, but economically, it is still a negative expected value. Moreover, the idea that you can fully cover a certain risk is an illusion. Your insurance does not cover every type of risk, and people typically have highly misguided ideas about risk factors. For example, terrorist attacks and shark attacks are quite high on people's radar in terms of things they have to worry about, but they are actually trivial for most people. Whereas getting killed in traffic is a very realistic outcome in current society, and it's not something that most people pay a lot of attention to as being risky. In a similar vein, people typically get a lot more anxious about a flight than their daily commute, whereas the risk objectively tends to be much higher in the daily commute as a result of their cumulative overall exposure over their life. And even if you are technically insured for something bad that happens to you, the insurance company will try to screw you over in every possible way. There's usually some fine print somewhere that allows the insurance company to say, well, sorry, you don't get your payout because some bureaucratic thing. I actually have a crazy personal experience with this. I bought a car to go to Portugal on a road trip, and the very first day I arrived there, some maniac crashed into my car. It was a crazy event with a high-speed chase and a lot of cars being damaged, and my car was one of those. The car was totaled. You could see it. It was obvious. It was so damaged that when the police arrived, they immediately dragged the car away. They had it impounded, and I had to go to the police station. I asked them, okay, what do I do? They said, well, your car is completely totaled. There's really nothing that has to be done. It's a very clear situation. You have to take the car to a salvage yard, a junkyard, basically. So I went there. You have to pay. You get the car there. And at the salvage yard, also, they said, yeah, it's completely totaled. You know, maybe you can get some money for some of the parts, but that's it. So I wrote my insurance, what exactly happened. I had the police report. I had the report from the salvage yard. And the insurance company said, yeah, sorry, you don't get any money because you should have waited for one of our agents from our agency to come visit the car before it was at the salvage yard, and they should have appraised what the value of the car was at that point in time. So now we cannot do that anymore, so we don't know what the value is, and therefore we cannot give you our money back. Even though it was obvious from the photos, from the police report, and from the salvage yard that the car was completely totaled. Moreover, it was impossible for an agent to visit the car because it was already dragged away before I got there. So it was literally impossible for me to do what they said I should have done.
And it's gone!
But that's how insurance companies operate. They are in it for the money, which comes at your expense. Well, under standard economic definitions, getting insurance is objectively irrational. Under modern economic theory, strong arguments can be made for getting insurance under what's called bounded rationality. Most people are risk averse, meaning they are willing to pay some money to lower their risk. Now, whether this risk is actually lower and whether this constitutes a meaningful difference in their lives, that's debatable, but many people are willing to pay some amount of money just to not have a certain risk, not have to worry about it. They're basically paying for peace of mind. Moreover, an additional argument can be made that if you're already very wealthy, there are strong diminishing returns to additional wealth, and there are very negative effects of a very big hit to your financials. So you could make the argument that if you already have enough money to get by and you're financially well off, and you pay, 100 extra per month for insurance, that doesn't really change your quality of life. Whereas it would change your quality of life if your house burned down and you had to pay a lot of money for that. So you can say there's an asymmetry there due to the diminishing utility, the diminishing extra benefit that you get from the money that you spend now versus the money that you would lose in the future potentially. However, I strongly encourage you to think of insurance as an investment with a negative expected value. Basically, it's an asymmetric investment with an asymmetric skew. That means that you are losing money most months with a possibility of someday getting a big payout. In that sense, buying insurance is very much like buying a lottery ticket. You expect to lose money on the lottery ticket every time you buy one, but maybe sometime in the future you could get a lot of money. Most of these investments do not pan out well, and like I said, they are objectively irrational in economical terms. What you could do instead is take this money, invest it into something with a positive expected outcome, and accumulate so much money that you have a buffer against financial headwinds. So you could invest the money into the stock market, for example, like a global ETF. Or if you have a lower risk tolerance, you could invest it in government bonds or treasuries right now, which also have a very interesting yield. These types of investments have a positive expected value, and some of them, like government bonds and treasuries, also have a very low risk. In economical terms, this is a much better investment, and if your money compounds in the stock market at 10% per annum, which is historically about the average, then you get a surprisingly large amount of money over time. So if your car or your house, something happens to it over the next 10-20 years, then you have a buffer against that type of risk. So this is my advice to many people, and this is also how I personally manage my finances. 1. Save a significant amount of money consistently over time, starting relatively early in life. That sometimes means you have to be very frugal, and that's fine, just minimize costs that you don't really need. If you go over all of your monthly expenses, there are usually a lot of things in there that you can cut that don't make a substantial difference in the quality of your life. If you instead save that money, invest it into something with a positive outcome, like stocks or bonds, and you put that money to the side, it will compound over time. This will build a financial buffer for you in case something bad happens. Point 2. You can also invest the money into yourself. This can mean becoming more productive, becoming a better investor, or in any other way, learning how to generate more money over the rest of your life. This often has a very high return on investment. Point 3. Insurance should be regarded as one of the potential investments, but know that it has a negative expected value. You are explicitly paying for your risk intolerance. You are paying a premium for your risk aversion, for peace of mind. If you are fine with that, then by all means get insurance, but I think for most people they should be aware that most of the insurance they buy has negative expected value. That goes for the insurance on your phone, on your car, on flights. There are so many companies these days that try to upsell you their type of insurance, and for most people you're probably better off investing that money into things with a positive expected outcome and letting it compound over time so that you become wealthy enough to be able to withstand financial headwinds like your phone breaking down or even your car breaking down. So I hope that helps you with your financial planning. If you like this type of evidence-based content about lifestyle design, I'd be honored if you like and subscribe.